Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Today I'll be joined by my good friend from Twitter, at Sarah Says 84. And if we're talking to Sarah, that means we're probably getting ready to talk Disneyland. Disneyland is set to reopen for California residents later this month on April 30th. We're going to be talking about a lot of things about that reopening, but mostly what's not going to reopen with the park, and if that would be a deal breaker for us thinking about going to Disneyland. To help the show, please like, subscribe, and comment. That really does help us a whole lot. Also, for a free, no-obligation quote on a Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or Universal Orlando resort vacation, actually, any type of vacation, I can help you plan it, and my services are always 100% free to you. Shoot me an email, rick@eartotheretravel.com, rick@eartotheretravel.com. You can also give me a call, 727-507-3123, 727-507-3123. But right now, let's get things started by welcoming my good friend, Sarah. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I am doing much better because we finally have news. We've had it for a little while, but we're getting more and more details each and every day. Disneyland is reopening, at least to California residents, on the 30th of this month. And I personally am so excited. I know you are as well.
Yes, I'm ecstatic. I'm so excited. They finally have a plan.
So the first thing we have to discuss is that we are not personally going to be able to go to Disneyland right when it opens. It's only going to be for California residents, and it's still going to be a really, really tough ticket to get. So what are you going to be looking at, Sarah, while it's open for California residents? What's going to help you determine if you want to try to make the trip down there, or are you just going to be like, the first moment I get to go, I'm going?
Yeah, no, I've thought a lot about this, and I really am interested to see how the reservation system is going to work, of course, because a lot of the things they have in place in Walt Disney World, I feel it works great for there because it's huge, but Disneyland is really small comparatively. So I'm interested to see how that's going to work, how it's going to work with the hotel reservations, because as we found out, it doesn't guarantee you are going to get a reservation for the park just because you stay at the hotel. So I just kind of want to see the whole flow of everything and people's experience in that as well.
And I think that's a great point, because one of the things about Walt Disney World's reopening is we saw what the rules were. We saw what they were saying. This is how you go about getting a reservation, or this is when it's not guaranteed, or this is what's going to be open, and all of those things. They had it written down on their website. But then in practice, it's kind of a whole different thing. How does it actually work? Not talking about how it looks on paper. Those are two completely different things.
Yeah, exactly. It's very different in practice than it is seeing it on the website.
So first and foremost, the things that are not going to be open, we're going to go over some of those things right now. And as a veteran of Disneyland, like Sarah, and as somebody who goes less frequently than Sarah goes, I will discuss this as well. We're going to talk about the rides that are going to be closed, some of the attractions and restaurants that are going to be closed, and how important we think they are, how much that not being open is going to affect the experience. So we're going to start in Disneyland Park, and we're just going to go in alphabetical order. The first one is Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters. Now, I can understand why this one is one that's not going to open with the park, because you have to hold a gun, for lack of a better term.
So yeah, you have to, you can't clean that between every person. It's totally not going to happen.
Right, so it's definitely high contact. Now, at Universal, what they do, at least down here in Florida, is before you get on a ride, they spray hand sanitizer into your hand so that you are sanitized when you are touching high-touch surfaces.
Oh, that's a good idea. I've never thought of that.
Walt Disney World is not doing that. They're providing enough hand sanitizer for guests so that they can use it when they want, but they're not forcing people. I think Disneyland, if they forced people to use the sanitizer might be able to do Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, but that's also an indoor ride, a lot of high contact. There are definitely a number of reasons why this one might not be open. But how big of an issue would that be for you going to Disneyland if Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters is closed?
It wouldn't be a big issue for me. I mean, maybe families that have a lot of small children that are really into Buzz Lightyear, but for us, it's fun, but it's not one that, it is a must do every time you go in.
In a world in which we have Toy Story Mania, I don't even care about Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters in Disneyland or Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin in Walt Disney World. I don't do either of them anymore. To tell you the truth, I don't even think I've ever done Astro Blasters at Disneyland. So that one doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. Chip 'n Dale Treehouse.
That one is geared only towards small children. Adults can't go into that at all that I'm aware of. Plus, it's a ball pit, so that seems like a really bad idea.
Oh, I 100% understand why they're not doing it, but you do have a little kid, so do you think that was something that you would have been doing normally, or do you just think you'd probably be skipping it anyway?
We'd probably be skipping it anyway. I mean, it maybe, but he's way more into things that go fast and things that are exciting, and he may see it and for a fleeting moment be like, oh, I want to go play in there, and then he'd see the 10,000 other children and be like, I don't want to go in there, thank you.
Here's more of an iconic experience that won't be there. Davey Crockett's Explorer Canoes. I never do this, but I know it is iconic. I guess it's another one that really does make sense. Actually, this one makes more sense than probably any of the other ones, why they're not doing it. If you have some sort of issue, there's no way to assist somebody off of a canoe and maintain 6 feet of distance. So this one just has to be closed, I would imagine. Do you do this one when you're at Disneyland?
To be honest, I don't think I ever have. But the thing is, too, that when I was like kind of looking through the list, this with a couple other that are closed this time of year. And like, I mean, they're usually closed anyway. They're almost closed seasonally. And so every time we've gone, if I rarely have seen them open because they're down because it's too cold or it's just they just are running at a more seasonal time. So I'm interested like with that. It's like I know definitely like what you were saying about like the safety and things like that, but also at the same time is it because they were already going to be closed? So
and this next one is just a huge bummer. The Disneyland Monorail. It's so iconic. It almost feels like you haven't been to Disneyland if you don't ride the Disneyland Monorail.
No, I completely agree. That one, when I saw that, that was a huge bummer that that's closed, especially because it's also a really fast route to get to downtown Disney without having to walk so far.
And this is something that has affected Walt Disney World with Epcot. The line from Magic Kingdom, from the TTC to Epcot isn't running. So it's inconvenient because you don't get the monorail from the TTC or the Magic Kingdom to Epcot. But it's also disappointing because you don't get those beautiful pictures of the monorail going through Epcot. I almost feel like I want the Disneyland monorail running more because I love to see the Disneyland monorail running than I actually care about riding it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, and like at Disneyland too, it really adds to the whole experience because when you're in Tomorrowland and part of the backside of Fantasyland behind the Matterhorn, just having it run through, it's like a lot of times you don't even think about it. It's just a part of the park, whether you're riding it or not. It just adds to the ambiance.
We talk about the Disneyland monorail being iconic, and it always reminds me of this story, and I hope I get all the details right, but when Richard Nixon was vice president, he visited Disneyland, and somehow cast members got him on the monorail, or he jumped on the monorail, and the cast members started driving the monorail before the Secret Service could join him in the car. And as anybody who's seen that monorail knows, once it starts, it has to go through a loop. So the Secret Service were left with their protected vice president basically being all by himself without Secret Service protection.
That's hilarious. I had no idea.
And that's the vice president for a pretty old sitting president at the time. Like, this was a big deal. So while that's a funny story, it also does show you how iconic these things are, how long that they have been here. And right now, they're not going to be operating. And it's unfortunate, but we understand that safety is the top priority. There's Donald's boat, which I don't even know what that is.
It's kind of in that same, it's almost like a little horseshoe of all these like play areas for small children. So like Chippendale's Treehouse and then Donald's boat. There's like a Goofy one, I think, that's also probably on your list. And so yeah, it's all small children attractions that are like play areas.
Right. So I was aware that Chippendale Treehouse was back there in Toontown. I guess, like a normal functioning adult without children, I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at those things because I'm not a creep. So that's probably why I don't know that one. Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage. I have a feeling that this may be the death nail for Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage. Would you agree with me? Do you think that it ever opens again?
You know what? I agree with you. I think every time I've gone that it's been open, it's been busy, but I think that now with COVID and with everything going on, it's the end for it. It's going to be, you can't stuff a bunch of people in a submarine safely unless it's like one person at a time.
Not to mention, there are reasons that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea doesn't exist in Walt Disney World anymore. It is a slow loading ride. It doesn't really get enough people through every hour, and you have to think about those things. It takes up a pretty decent amount of space in Disneyland, and at Disneyland, space is at a premium.
It really is. And I mean, that spot sat vacant forever. Like, I remember as a small child, I rode the original submarines, like not 50s, of course, but like all the before it then became just a giant pond with the top of the submarine sitting there. And then when Nemo came, but yeah, it's just, there is much better use for that space, in my opinion.
And obviously what we're saying now is complete 100% speculation on our part. Disney has not said anything. Until you hear it from the mouse, it's not true.
Exactly.
Now we're about to get to a couple that really, really hurt. That I think are going to hit people right in the gut. Great moments with Mr. Lincoln. I can't envision going to Disneyland and not doing great moments with Mr. Lincoln, especially if it's your first time.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I saw that on the list because it is in such a huge theater that they don't have the spacing. But I mean, with Contact, it makes sense because you would have to cross off so many seats, and each time it's like you could only run it like maybe every other showing and have to re-clean in between each. But it's true, and it's right when you walk in there into Disneyland, you go under the railroad and there it is, and it's like, oh, and I know it's a nice place to cool down. It's kind of sad. I'm sad that's closed. I mean, I've seen it quite a few times, but it's a great show.
For anybody who is a big Disney nerd, if you will, like, of course, I am and Sarah is, we wouldn't be talking to you right now if we weren't. The Abraham Lincoln animatronic is such an important part of theme park history, and this show is such an important part of theme park history. You wouldn't have Hall of Presidents in Walt Disney World with all of the presidents if it didn't start with this concept for Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. It's kind of sad.
Yes, it is.
And one that is definitely going to upset some people as we continue alphabetically. And now this one is because it is going through a refurb. So this doesn't have as much to do with any of the pandemic protocols or anything like that. It's Jungle Cruise. They're taking this opportunity to do a refurb on it. They're doing a refurbishment on the one in Walt Disney World. They're just doing that one while it is also open. There are going to be some people missing Jungle Cruise, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And especially in Disneyland, it's like one of two attractions, 3 if you count the Tiki Room in Adventureland. So there's going to be a big empty hole there of just people standing around for quite a while. And I totally understand the refurbishment. I mean, I'm super excited to see it when it's done, and because when you've gone on it so many times, yes, the nostalgia, of course, but it's nice to see something a little new, and it's almost like a whole new experience. Well, I mean, it is a whole new experience, but it's almost like a whole new, like, I'm writing this for the first time feeling.
I absolutely agree with you, because I do feel, as somebody who is spoiled, I'll admit it, like, I'm spoiled, you to a certain extent are spoiled as well. We get to go a lot. So we get to become sick of the Jungle Cruise jokes. And I know not everybody has that luxury because maybe they only go a few times in their lifetime and they went the first time and they really, really laughed at all the jokes. And then the second time they want to relive it a little bit. I get all of that. I understand why it is nostalgic for people. For somebody who goes a lot, you just end up not going on Jungle Cruise most of the time. And when I was a kid and we would go on vacation, when I lived in Pennsylvania, we would come down. We would only go like once a year, maybe once every other year. It was the ride we rope dropped at Magic Kingdom every time because it was such a big deal on vacation. But as somebody who goes a lot, it starts to lose that luster. So the refurb is going to be awesome. And while they're at 15% capacity, they don't need to be eating people, if you will, as much as they will when they're back at 100% capacity. So if you're going to be doing a refurbishment, you might as well get it out of the way right now.
Yeah, exactly. This is the best time to be able to do those, especially the big overhauls.
The Main Street Cinema is going to be closed as well. Now, that's not as upsetting for Disneyland people as when they tried to sell some T-shirts there a couple years ago. And everybody basically rioted because of that. Main Street Cinema is going to be closed. I guess that's probably another situation where there'd be a lot of high contact because they have the armrests, if you will.
At least last time I was in, there was a big open room. There's some seats kind of around for people to sit, and then a big railing thing kind of in the middle. You can stand and then watch all the stuff in the middle. It's a great place to stop for air conditioning.
And I assume a lot of those areas, they just don't want to designate cast members to be there to make sure everybody's socially distancing, everybody's wearing their masks. So they're going to close them, not because people couldn't be there, but probably because you want to make sure that everybody's being safe everywhere, and you just can't always do that. The Matterhorn bobsleds are also going through a refurbishment. And that's another one of those, I just can't picture going to Disneyland without doing the Matterhorn bobsleds. Now, this is just a refurbishment, so that doesn't mean that it won't be open by summer, or we're not speculating on any of these things, but this closure doesn't really have anything to do with the protocols.
Right. And this is about the time they usually close Matterhorn after holiday for refurbishment. It's pretty standard around this time. So I'm really hoping, that they do. It worries me a little bit that they won't because of the way the handholds are in the cars because they're down low, and it's not one, I'm not one who can really put my hands up on that ride because it shakes you around so much. So so I'll be interested to see. I'm really hoping, crossing my fingers, that yes, after the refurbishment, it'll be ready for summer and ready to be open.
Mickey's House and Meet Mickey and Minnie's House, obviously like some of the other kid-oriented attractions, just closed out of necessity. Meeting Mickey, meet and greets are basically not happening anywhere. Completely understand that one. The Pirates' Lair on Tom Sawyer Island. So immediately when Walt Disney World reopened at Magic Kingdom, Tom Sawyer Island was open just like normal. Then they did a refurb to the Rivers of America, so they shut down Tom Sawyer Island for a little bit. And then when they reopened Tom Sawyer Island, they only cut it off at half of the island. So now you can't go back to the fort and some of those things. I wonder if there's something they saw in the first few months of Walt Disney World being open about it being difficult to manage things on Tom Sawyer Island, that they had to kind of cut it in half, and now with Disneyland opening, they're not doing the Pirates' Lair.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's not a space that can really be monitored well, and a lot of people are of that mindset of, you're outside. If I'm away from someone, I'm going to take my mask off. And you can't monitor that in a park that big when you have in the Pirates Lair, it's so you're going to have to send cast members in there to be monitoring people inside. So to me, it completely makes sense.
There are so many tight areas on Tom Sawyer Island that I'm kind of surprised what is still open on Tom Sawyer Island at Walt Disney World. I mean, I completely trust them. I know that Disney is paranoid about all of these things and they're really keeping up and they're trying to keep people safe. I trust them. There are just some things where I'm like, oh, I didn't expect to be able to go through these caves on Tom Sawyer Island. But also, that's not the most popular thing at Magic Kingdom or at Disneyland. So in those respects, it's still pretty easy to keep socially distant because not a lot of people do them.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good place if you have a lot of kids with you who need to get some energy out to let them just go run free.
The sailing ship Columbia also closed. Do you ever do this one?
I've done it once or twice, but usually when we're there, it's closed for refurbishment. But the few times that I have done it, it's pretty fun. I believe like a long time ago, I don't know if you still can, but you could go below deck. So I could see why it's closed because of that. Because it is a ship, and so it is very tight down there. But definitely, there's a lot of stuff to touch, a lot of hands on. So having to try and keep the upkeep on that totally makes sense for that to be closed.
This next one, I 100% knew it was going to be the case. I don't blame them. It's just a bummer. The Sleeping Beauty Castle walkthrough. The last time I was at Disneyland, it was when they were refurbing the castle. So I didn't get to do this the last time I was there, and now presumably I won't get to do it the next time I'm there. It's a bummer, but I totally get it. There's some tight spaces in there, and it's kind of a hard place to start a new queue as well. If you have to keep people 6 feet apart, you're really going to end up clogging up an area of Fantasyland by having that line coming out of there.
It would almost be like when you're a kid at the park and you're on the slide and you have to wait till someone gets up. Like you have to walk from the top for someone to come out the other side. I agree. I was bummed when I saw that. Totally makes sense, but that is an amazing little I think it's like a little hidden gem of the park because a lot of people don't realize it's there because it's not big and out there and like, hey, come and look at this. It's like hidden a little bit. And so if you know it's there or someone tells you it's there, it's a great experience.
And I'm trying to think of the most sensitive way to say this, but a lot of guests have a hard time with the markers on the ground, and that's perfectly fine when there are cast members there to help remind people when you're in more open spaces. But when you're in that tight castle walkthrough, I just don't know if everybody's going to properly be able to follow those markers. So it definitely makes sense. Doesn't mean it's any less of a bummer. Star Wars Launch Bay also not reopening with the park on April 30th. Star Wars Launch Bay at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World still hasn't opened as an attraction. It is open as a relaxation station where guests can take off their mask and rest for a little bit, but they don't have any of the stuff inside happening.
Yeah, when I first read it, I was just skimming and I thought they were talking about Batu and I'm like, oh my gosh, people are gonna freak out. And then I read it again, I'm like, oh no, that's the old Innoventions building. So I've done it before, but it's the same thing at Disneyland. It's you walk through, you see some cool artifacts. There's a tiny little shop towards the end you can look through. But it's mostly the meet and greets with like Darth Vader and Kylo Ren and Chewbacca. Yeah, I mean, unless you're really looking forward to like that's what you were going there to do, which you can't do meet and greets now anyway. It really, I don't think it's going to hinder the park in any way. For people who've never been, if this was like their first trip, then you're not really missing a whole lot of Disneyland not going through that.
I would say in Disneyland Park, it is the least exciting Star Wars related thing. It's great, and I'm glad they have it. I'm not putting it down at all. I'm just saying it's probably something that 15% capacity, just trying to get these things open for everybody, it's okay to miss that one. The Storybook Land canal boats is a little sad because I do think this is an iconic thing. It also takes a lot of cast members to operate it. At 15% capacity, I think those cast members might be better dispersed doing other things. That's my guess as to why Storybook Land canal boats aren't going to be operating.
Yeah, I agree because on those boats, I mean, you can only fit so many people to begin with. So to run at 15% capacity, in my opinion, it would be like almost like overworking those poor cast members of having to run that ride so frequently and only a few people on the boat. But I agree, it's a sad one to not be open right now. It'll be great when it does reopen and everyone can experience it again, but there's probably a better use of those cast members just for the time being.
I don't think there's anything at Disney's California Adventure that is going to be closed upon reopening that surprises anybody. The Animation Academy takes a lot of cast members. It is indoors, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is.
The bakery tour, well, that's a lot of free samples, a lot of high contact stuff. You don't want to be doing that. I can completely understand that one as well. Maybe the Golden Zephyr surprises me a little bit. If somebody mainly does Walt Disney World and they're listening to this and they haven't been to Disneyland or they haven't spent a lot of time in California Adventure, if you could explain the Golden Zephyr to them.
You go up this, just a big structure, and you get on, and they're like these giant airships, and you get in and you ride it, and it's almost like a swing ride, but you're all in one vehicle, and it fits a ton of people. And there's, I think, there's three of them on there, and then it just spins in a circle, and then it comes back down, and you get down and you walk back down.
And it seems like that would probably be hard to keep people separated in their individual Zephyrs. It also probably takes a lot to operate. And even though they can fit a lot of people in the Zephyrs, it probably doesn't run as many people through as some other rides.
No, every time we've gone in the last like 10 years, that is probably, of all the rides you see in California Adventure, from what I see myself, has the least amount of people that are waiting for it, if there's ever even a wait that's more than 5 minutes. So it's definitely having the cast members at other places, especially since Pixar Pier really wasn't open that long before it had to close down because of COVID. So to kind of redirect to those new areas, it makes sense at only 15% capacity to not have that ride running.
Grizzly River Run is going to be closed, but as we've mentioned with some of these other attractions, it might not be because of protocols. It might be because that usually goes through a refurbishment every year. It's not open a whole lot when it's going to be colder outside and things like that.
Especially with it being only people from California that can go. They aren't really the people that are riding it. It's the tourists who are coming from out of state that are like, I'm in California, I'm going to do a water ride, this is going to be great. And this time of year, I don't really see the capacity that you see on other rides, because people like me, I don't like water rides and I don't want to get wet.
That is such a good point, because as somebody who gets to go a lot, if you're an annual pass holder who's going to Disneyland or Walt Disney World, like, I never ride Cali River Rapids at Disney's Animal Kingdom anymore because I don't want to get wet on a random Tuesday when I might be at the park. And so many people who are going to be going to Disneyland at 15% capacity are going to be locals who are not going for the first time. I didn't even think of that you're going to have so many people who are local who go all the time, as opposed to Walt Disney World, which now is getting a lot of vacationers. So yes, you open Cali River Rapids, but Grizzly River Run doesn't have to. Good point, Sarah.
Thank you.
The red car trolley, this is another thing that would kind of keep people packed in if they were to do it. Completely makes sense why that's gone away. The Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, I know a lot of people really love this. Once again, a lot of high contact areas. You're strapped into a harness, which is going to be strapped around other people later in the day. There's just no feasible way to do this right now.
No, definitely when you can have more capacity as well to do that. Because that's another one kind of like where it's super fun to do. There's a lot of people that like do it. Kids love to do it, but it's not really packed this time of year anyway.
So that's just a short list of things that aren't going to be open when Disneyland reopens. There's some restaurants that will not be open. There's some other experiences. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned that really caught your eye, really disappointed you, or made sense to you that we haven't mentioned in this list?
We touched on most of the ones that I kind of had like a oh moment and that makes sense moment. One thing for sure with like restaurants real quick is that don't worry to everyone who is going, especially if you live in California, you may not go all the time. There is a lot that is still open that is really good. That is the list looks like all the good stuff is closed, but it is not true. There is a lot that will still be open that and I noticed that Disneyland too has been slowly updating their site so you can check there and they will tell you if it's open or temporarily closed.
On the dining and the bar front, I think a lot of people are going to be upset about Blue Bayou not reopening with the park, and in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Oga's Cantina.
I was a little surprised that Oga's wasn't opening. I mean, I've never been there, but from all the pictures I've seen and all of that, and it's open in Walt Disney World, right?
It is open in Walt Disney World. I do think that Walt Disney World is in Florida, which has different rules about bars and what can be done indoors with bars and what can be done outdoor with bars. So I'm thinking that even though you are on the planet of Batuu, you are still under California law. So I think that is probably going to be something that is closed not because of Disneyland's choice.
Yeah.
But just because of the specific laws in California.
That makes total sense.
So, Sarah, before we go, as you look at the first few weeks and months, obviously we don't know when they're going to say out-of-state guests can visit, but what are you going to be looking at to know if you feel it's safe for you or your family to travel down to Disneyland?
I am definitely going to be looking at their safety procedures, kind of what are they doing at the parks? Like, is it being as closely followed as they say it is? And how well things are running with that 15% capacity. Like, are they having a lot of issues? Is it running pretty smoothly? They're not having more cases of COVID, because I do know from family who live down in Southern California that is still a pretty high rate of positive cases. So that's definitely something my family has been watching of that area. Is like, okay, so is Disney doing everything that they can with the state to make it safe even with a higher rate of cases?
There are a couple things I am going to add to what you just said, because I believe Walt Disney World, the evidence is there that they have done a pretty good job of reopening Walt Disney World, especially considering what the numbers were looking like in Florida when it reopened and at different points throughout the year. They definitely have done a really good job at Walt Disney World. I also think that because they had to wait so long before the state of California would allow them to reopen Disneyland, that the last thing they want to do is mess up this. They are going to be on their P's and Q's making sure that this is perfect. Obviously, Disney is always on their P's and Q's because they want you to have a great vacation. But right now they know if there are any bad stories coming out of the Disneyland reopening, they're going to be in a tough situation. So they want to make sure they do this right. And I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes. And I know my family's excited for it to open to everyone. And I understand why they're doing it the way that they're doing it. It's a bummer, but now we get to see how it's going to run and how things will be when we finally get to go.
And one thing I will say to people in Southern California, people who might have the chance to go when it reopens, a lot of people might say, I want to see how it goes. They might be like Sarah. This is coming from somebody who went to Walt Disney World starting the week it reopened. And I am going to say, waiting might not be the safest option, because you will be surprised what 15% capacity looks like in the parks. You'll be surprised how empty it's going to be. The amount of space that you can have not bumping into other people. I still dream about those first couple of weeks after Walt Disney World reopened, because they were the safest I've felt since everything happened. It's true that the crowds are starting to come back at Walt Disney World. I think Walt Disney World is doing a great job of keeping everybody safe and doing the right things. But there are people who are there now who said, I'm going to wait and see how it goes. And now they're there now waiting 65 minutes for Big Thunder Mountain, when the first week after they reopened, I showed up and rode Big Thunder Mountain 5 times in an hour. If you have the opportunity to take advantage of this, I would recommend it. Obviously, Sarah and I will be going to Disneyland from out of state, so we have to wait a little while. And thank you so much, Sarah. This ended up being a much longer conversation than I was expecting, so I appreciate your patience. And thank you for joining me. Tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at SarahSays84. And if you end up going, California residents, I want to see all your pictures of an empty Disneyland because I've never seen that in my life. So friend me, send me your pictures. I'd love to see them.
And it's Sarah with an H.
Sarah with an H, yes.
At SarahSays84. So thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
And I want to thank all of you for joining us as well. This has been episode 11 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And of course, if you're looking for a free, no obligation quote on a Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Orlando Resort, or any other type of vacation, shoot me an email, rick@eartotheretravel.com, rick@eartotheretravel.com. You can give me a phone call, 727-507-3123, 727-507-3123. My travel agent services are always 100% free to you. We are keeping up to date on everything going on at Walt Disney World, and yes, everything going on at Disneyland. For pictures, videos, and blogs about the theme parks, head to facebook.com/eartothererick, twitter.com/rick_ear, and instagram.com/rickear2there. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We'll have another brand new episode next Thursday. Have a great week.